Hi everyone, before watching the video, please give me a like and subscribe. Thank you very much. After marrying the CEO, the distance between us remained vast. Aside from our daily routines and our time together each night, we barely saw each other. She possessed an incredibly cold personality. Even when I brought up the subject of divorce, she only gave it a brief, detached consideration. I stood up slowly and said, "Ethan doesn't necessarily have to follow me. I'll have to trouble you from now on." "It's no problem," she replied. My belongings were few. A single suitcase was more than enough. Before leaving the room, I turned back to close the door carefully. Elena stood silently on the balcony, gazing into the far distance. News of my younger brother, Julian, returning to the country had already hit the trending searches. After all, he had been a famous dancer since he was young. In the interview video, he looked as handsome as ever in a well-tailored suit. But what caught my eye was the final image. In a car with the window half down, Julian's head precisely obscured another person. Although the face wasn't clear, you could see the delicate silhouette of a woman. Furthermore, their posture suggested they were kissing. Julian's fans were going wild, trying to track down the owner of the vehicle. I recognized the car immediately. It belonged to my wife, Elena. It was a limited edition Rolls-Royce Phantom. It was impossible to mistake it. It seemed Elena wouldn't be coming home tonight. I sighed and took over the entire 2-meter-wide bed. In the middle of the night, however, a pair of cold hands woke me. "Are you awake?" A polite voice whispered. "I'm sorry to disturb you." I wasn't fully conscious yet and took a moment to gather my thoughts. She had already pushed me to one side to carve out a space for herself on the bed. "I'm sorry, I didn't think you were coming back tonight," I mumbled. The lights flickered on. Elena stood with her back to me, shedding her bathrobe, radiating an effortless elegance and charm. A minute later, she pressed her neck against mine. "Can we kiss?" she asked. It was a polite question, but in reality, she didn't wait for my consent. As our lips met, I could clearly feel her neck beginning to break into a light sweat beneath my palms. Elena pushed herself up, her long arm reaching out to open the bedside drawer. Then she frowned. "Why are we out?" "I'm sorry. I forgot to buy more," I said slowly. Elena looked at me for a moment, then lay down beside me, her tone sounding surprisingly considerate. "It's fine. I'll stop by and pick up a box on my way home from work tomorrow." When I woke up, the other side of the bed was already empty. I glanced at my phone and realized it was nearly noon. The woman who had shared my bed last night was making headlines once again. Elena Sterling, CEO of the Sterling Group, had been invited to attend the debut performance of Julian following his return to the country. This time, netizens hadn't just identified Elena as the owner of the car from the night before. They were using magnifying glasses to analyze the photos, concluding the two had surely spent a passionate night together. Despite Elena wearing a high-collared white gown, she couldn't hide the faint marks on her neck, and Julian's lip happened to be noticeably bruised. Reflecting on it, one could guess how intense their night must have been. The news spread like wildfire, with insiders revealing that years ago, Elena had been willing to forfeit her inheritance to marry Julian. However, at the last moment, Julian had walked away, unwilling to trade his dance career to become a live-in son-in-law for the Sterling family. Reunited years later, both had reached the pinnacle of their respective fields. Every glance and gesture between them seemed to overflow with the lingering love of their youth. The comment sections were filled with praise for how perfect they looked together. A few anonymous accounts attempted to point out that she was already married, but they were quickly drowned out by mockery. So what if she's married? No one can replace the light of one's youth. She'll probably just divorce him to be with Julian anyway. As I was about to like one of those comments, a new photo flooded the feed. It was a backstage shot after the show. Elena was presenting Julian with flowers, smiling like a muse. Elena, the woman who never showed emotion, was looking at Julian with a rare, breathtaking tenderness. My heart skipped a beat, but not in a good way. Complex emotions swirled in my mind. We had known each other for years and been married for 5, yet I had never seen her smile at me like that. She had never given me flowers. If Julian was the one who got away for Elena, then I was simply the burden her family had strapped to her back. Julian, Elena, and I had all grown up in the same neighborhood and attended the same schools. But the two of them had studied calligraphy under the same master since childhood. Their bond was much deeper. As for me, the first time I even got Elena's personal phone number was 2 weeks after we were married. Elena had worked overtime for half a month straight without once returning to our marital home. When my mother-in-law found out, she visited me, accusing me of not caring enough about Elena's health. So, I sent my wife a message for the first time. "Will you be home for dinner tonight?" Half an hour later, Elena replied, "Who is this, please?" "It's me, Silas." "Oh, thanks, but you don't need to wait for me." It wasn't until 3 months later that Elena sent me her first message. "Tomorrow is New Year's Eve dinner. Do you have any plans? I need to go back to the family estate." "All right. Do you need me to buy or bring anything?" I replied. A moment later, my phone chimed with a notification. A transfer of $1 million had hit my account. Elena replied, "Decide for yourself." From that moment on, I knew Elena didn't love me. She treated me like an employee at her company, using money to manage me. But I didn't mind much. Being a son-in-law in a family like this had its perks. It didn't matter if she came home or not, as long as I had the freedom to spend. Our relationship improved slightly after I stayed the night at the Sterling estate. To avoid suspicion from her parents, she was forced to share a bed with me. I assumed she wouldn't touch me, but my mother-in-law had prepared a soup heavily seasoned with oyster essence. Elena apologized first, then asked, "Why aren't you coming over?" I blushed. After a long while, she seemed to lose her restraint. "Why haven't you made a move yet?" Much later, I understood why she lost control that night. It was the day Julian announced he had a girlfriend abroad. When she found out she was pregnant, Elena simply sent me a photo of the ultrasound from the OB/GYN. 5 hours later, perhaps realizing how cold that was, another $1 million was transferred to my account. After 6 months of struggle, our son, Ethan, was born. We set up a trust fund to cover his education, medical, and living expenses for his entire life. As time drifted by, many people knew Elena was married, but no one knew what kind of man her husband was. We only saw each other at night for our routines, and outside of discussing Ethan, we never spoke of anything personal. In 5 years, we never fought once. One could even say we were respectful, yet we remained strangers. At 3 p.m., I picked Ethan up from kindergarten and headed home. When I pushed open the door, I found Julian lounging on the sofa in our living room. He was holding our family's small dog and waved at me. "You're back." Ethan's little face lit up, and he let out a loud shout. "Uncle, you're Julian." The boy was a huge fan of his and had never forgotten him. Julian ruffled Ethan's hair, giving me a bright, beaming smile. "Your son seems to like me more too." Even though Ethan was still young, his eyes were shining as he looked up at him. "Uncle, please stay at our house. Don't ever leave again." I carried the groceries I'd bought on the way home into the kitchen. Despite the distance, I could still hear Julian's chuckling voice. "If I stay at your house, where will your daddy go?" "He could just leave," Ethan added. "Daddy doesn't have anything to do here anyway." The sound of the running faucet hummed in the background. Suddenly, the door opened. Elena stood in the doorway, her face etched with exhaustion. "May I come in? Is something wrong?" I asked. She pointed toward the pot on the stove. "The soup smells wonderful. Can I have some?" "Of course," I nodded. It was the soup I had originally prepared for her anyway. I ladled out a bowl and handed it to her. Elena took it with a soft, "Thank you. I know you've worked hard." While I walked back out, Julian suddenly flashed me a grin. "Silas, your soup is as delicious as always." I was taken aback, noticing that the bowl Elena had just taken was now in Julian's hands as he drank from it. He let out a satisfied sigh. "I'm so jealous that you know how to cook." "Uncle, you're such a great dancer." "It's okay if you can't cook," Ethan piped up. "My mommy can just cook for you." Ethan had been spoiled by the Sterling family since birth. I was the only person who ever set boundaries for him, forbidding him from being rude or using his family status to bully other children. As a result, Ethan had never really liked me. He took after his mother. He only looked at the things or people he found appealing. Julian wasn't wrong. It wasn't just my wife, my son, and even my little dog all liked him more. The thought of divorce flickered in my mind again as I decided it was time to talk to Elena. It happened a week later, during the night, just after we had finished our usual routine. She suddenly mentioned she had to go out for a trip. I cut her moving. "I have something I want to say, too." As I expected, she showed no particular reaction after hearing my request. She simply sat up, distancing herself from me. Her face remained expressionless, as if she were receiving a status report from a secretary. I don't need custody of the child. He'll have to rely on you from now on. That's fine. I'll manage. You've worked hard these past few years. It clearly hasn't been easy for you, having to share a bed with someone you have no feelings for. I said, my eyes weary. I spoke to myself more than her. My belongings were few. A single suitcase was enough to hold my entire life. I left the signed divorce agreement resting quietly on the living room table. Before leaving, I pulled the door shut, catching one last glimpse of Elena standing silently on the balcony. I hadn't told anyone about the divorce yet. Ethan was asleep in his room, while next door at my parents' house, they were busy celebrating Julian's birthday. Once Elena finished her work, she would head out to find Julian, bringing along the gift she had meticulously prepared in her study. It was a custom-made dance costume. The first time I saw it, even I thought it was beautiful. But neither she nor this marriage ever truly belonged to me. No one remembered that I had once won a national youth competition when I was a child. My teachers used to say my physical talent was extraordinary, a 1 in 1,000 kind of gift. But after accidentally falling from a high stage, I could never dance again. Back then, I locked myself in my room for months, washing my face with my own tears. It was the most agonizing period of my life. My parents were heartbroken for a while, but then they simply handed Julian over to the same dance master. If the older brother had talent, the younger brother might reach even greater heights. From that day on, I couldn't bear to look at anything related to dance. From the moment I decided to leave until I boarded the plane, I never looked back. Once on board, a beautiful flight attendant brought me a small cake. Sir, thank you for choosing our airline. We all wish you a very happy birthday. I was taken aback for a second, then smiled. Thank you. My destination was my grandmother's house in the countryside. After landing, I had to transfer to a high-speed train, followed by a dedicated tourist bus. Over the years, my grandmother's village had been developed by the government into a scenic resort. Every day, buses ferried visitors back and forth. For 5 or 6 hours, the bus wound its way along mountain roads. Through the old glass windows, white clouds seemed to rise directly from the earth. The wind and the warmth rushed in together. I took a few photos and happily posted them to Weibo. The sudden ringing of my phone interrupted my relaxation. It was a call from Elena. Is something wrong? I asked. Ethan has a fever. Do you know where the medicine cabinet is? In the storage room on the 2nd floor. After a brief silence, Elena continued. I found it. Thank you. Just as I was about to hang up, she spoke again. Give my regards to your grandmother. Come home once you've had enough fun. Ethan keeps calling your name. I gripped the phone tightly. Then you'll have to tell him that we are divorced. The sound of a lighter flicked over the line. It seemed Elena had lit a cigarette. Her voice remained chillingly calm. Is it because of Sarah? It took me a moment to register the name, and I immediately felt confused. What does she have to do with me? She's returned, Elena said. Are the two of you together right now? I rubbed my temples. Elena, you don't seem very lucid right now. I don't understand what you're talking about, and I don't want to hear it. If you can't find things in the house from now on, ask the butler. If the child is sick, take him to a doctor. I hope our relationship from this point forward will be one of not disturbing each other. Elena was silent for a long beat. As you wish. When I arrived at my grandmother's front gate, my heart was racing. The ancient village had become more modern, yet retained the unique characteristics of the local ethnic minorities. In the familiar courtyard stood a young woman wearing a black dress. I rolled my suitcase toward her, looking at her hesitantly, and she stared back at me without blinking. As the distance closed, we both realized it at the same time. Sarah, it was shocking that such a coincidence could exist in this world. Returning to my hometown, I had run into the very friend I used to compete with. During the years I was forced to give up dance due to my injury, Sarah had persevered. After graduating from university, she, much like Julian, had gone abroad to study. I had seen their performance posters many times. Elena likely knew Sarah's schedule only because of Julian. They belonged to the same dance troupe. Sarah told me that since returning, she had wanted to create a unique traditional folk dance. My grandmother's village had recently become famous for its heritage culture, so she had come specifically to gather inspiration. After some simple small talk, Sarah suddenly asked tentatively, Silas, after what happened back then, did you ever try to dance again? I remained silent. Sarah continued, I met a specialist in this field while I was abroad. Her clinic focuses entirely on rehabilitation. Do you want to try? The success rate might not be 100%, and she paused. The treatment costs are quite high. If you need it, I can lend you the money. Seeming worried she might have overstepped, Sarah looked at me tensely. Of course, if you don't want to, just act like I never said anything. In the first few years after my injury, I never stopped trying to recover. But every treatment eventually failed. Facing the astronomical costs of rehabilitation, I was constantly filled with hope only to be met with crushing despair. Additionally, when my family's business suffered losses and could no longer afford the expenses, I gradually gave up. I married into Elena's family, crawled into that marriage, and lived a blurred existence. Over those few years, I had long ago lost the drive I once had. I intended to refuse Sarah, but the words that came out were, "All right, I'll try." Even if there was only a 10% chance, I wanted to seize it. After saying that, I stood frozen in place, my hands trembling slightly with fear. My body simply wasn't ready to give up yet. My plans shifted abruptly. After having dinner with my grandmother, I contacted Professor Rose, the specialist Sarah had mentioned. The professor asked me several detailed questions about my condition and mentioned she had successfully treated similar cases before, telling me not to worry. Afterward, she had her assistant schedule an appointment for me the following month. When I hung up, I felt as if I were dreaming. Beside me, Sarah seemed even more excited than I was. "Thank you," I told her. My heart began to race. The reality of it all felt surreal. She shook her head. "Actually, I'm doing this for myself too, Silas. If the treatment goes well, I'd like to ask for a favor later." "Deal." I agreed immediately without asking for details. A month later, I flew abroad to Professor Rose's medical facility. Despite the language barrier and knowing no one, I settled into a routine. Every day consisted of monotonous, repetitive rehabilitation sessions. However, the right leg I thought would be stiff forever was truly beginning to recover. Sometimes, I could even perform dance movements I hadn't been able to do in years. Professor Rose told me that compared to other patients, my condition wasn't actually that severe. Plus, the fact that I had taken good care of myself over the years helped. "You'll be able to be discharged soon," she said. "Your body is stronger than you imagine. It has been silently healing all these years. All you needed was to wait." Because of those words, I dropped every other plan, pouring all my time and energy into the recovery process. The staff even joked that I arrived earlier than they did for their shifts. "That's enough for today's session," the assistant said with a smile. "Same time tomorrow. If you get here early, just let yourself in." After he left, I stayed behind to tidy up my belongings. At that moment, a round-faced girl pushing a wheelchair stood at the door, hesitating. Her name was Cindy, a fellow Chinese patient living in the dorm next to mine. Cindy's condition was much more serious than mine. She was a tennis player who had been wheelchair-bound for 5 years following a car accident. Every evening, we would cook dinner together and take a walk by the river. But today, Cindy seemed downcast. It wasn't until we returned to the dormitory that she finally spoke. Professor Rose said, "My legs are very unlikely to recover." Furthermore, I saw his wedding photos online. I knew exactly who Cindy was talking about. They had known each other since high school and pursued their careers with the same burning ambition. They practiced together every night and were finally on the verge of competing as a duo when the accident happened. Though she survived, she lost all sensation in her legs. Cindy locked away her tennis rackets and fled the country. I heard that the guy had stayed single back home for 5 years, waiting for her. Now, he was finally getting married. "I'm happy for him," Cindy said while wiping away her tears. "No one can stay in one place forever. He has to move forward, and that's a good thing. But for some reason, I still feel this intense sensation of being trapped in the past. I wonder if it's shameful to think like this." I handed her a tissue. Cindy opened a bottle of beer. After drinking for a while, she drifted into a restless sleep. I carried her to bed and tucked her in. Suddenly, I received a message from an unknown number. "Grandmother said you went abroad. Do you have enough money?" I stared at the screen, unable to think of who could have sent it. A second later, my Alipay notification pinged. A transfer of $2 million. In that instant, I knew exactly who the owner of this new number was. I stared at the message for a long time before transferring the money back. As my rehabilitation drew to a close, Sarah mentioned she was nearby and would stop by to pick me up. She spoke with Professor Rose for a long time and then looked at me with a wide smile. Congratulations, Silas, the great fan dancer. I flinched, feeling the title was a bit much. I had only just recovered, and there was still a long road ahead of me. Right now, I didn't even know where to start. Sarah's expression turned serious. Remember how I said I'd ask you for a favor? I nodded. She rubbed her nose nervously. My choreography is finished, but I'm missing a lead dancer. Silas, do you want to join me? I was completely stunned. This wasn't just some small performance in a local theater where a few mistakes wouldn't matter. This was, don't worry too much, Sarah said. Think it over carefully before you give me an answer. I knew I should refuse. This was a vital piece of work for Sarah. Compared to me, there were many more professional dancers who would be better suited for this opportunity. But in that moment, though I opened my mouth, no rejection came out. I wanted this chance desperately. When I got home and Cindy found out, she gave me a piece of her mind. Why would you even think of refusing? You have to go. She started pulling out my luggage. If you dare give this up, I'll never acknowledge you as my friend again. You hear me? Silas, enduring pain is easy. It's easy enough to just stand there and blame yourself. But taking action to transform that pain is incredibly difficult. You have to tear yourself apart, push forward, and stitch yourself back together just to see a glimmer of opportunity. And there are so many others fighting you for that same chance. I've been weak enough for the both of us, she said with a pained smile. But I hope my friend can be brave. So don't be afraid, Silas. Move forward. Soon after, my treatment concluded. I cleaned the entire dormitory and stocked the refrigerator with food. I reminded Cindy that if she couldn't find something, she should message me. Although our time together was brief, for some reason, the goodbye felt deeply poignant. Just go already, Cindy urged impatiently. The last image I have of her is of her sitting by the window, waving at me. The sunlight washed over her clean, gentle face. Cindy always smiled as if she didn't have a single worry in the world. That was the last time I ever saw her. Upon returning home, my parents finally learned that I had divorced Elena. They were absolutely livid. Are you out of your mind? People would kill for a wealthy wife like that. We worked so hard to pave such a smooth path for you, and you just throw it away. After the shouting subsided, they moved to threats, demanding I go find Elena immediately to reconcile. In the name of Ethan, she'll agree to remarry you. I refused. My father was so enraged, he clutched his chest. You truly have a hole in your head, he barked. Why did I give birth to someone as stupid as you? My mother said nothing, merely looking at me with eyes full of disappointment. Sitting on the sofa in the living room, I felt myself shrinking the moment I stepped back inside. So what if Elena has someone else she likes, or doesn't care about you at all? My father continued. Even if she were having an affair, you should stay in that house for the rest of your life. Wait until the child inherits the fortune. Then you'll have everything and can do whatever you want. Don't be a dreamer. You're 26, not a naive little boy. If you won't think of yourself, at least think of this family. I shook my head. With Julian here, Elena won't withdraw her capital from the family business. The person she has always wanted to marry is Julian. You both know that, don't you? Soon enough, you'll probably hear good news from them. They still didn't understand, or didn't want to. If you insist on this, then never step foot in this house again. I stood up, trying to shield my heart in front of my father, gritting my teeth to hold back the tears. Mom, Dad, for so many years, I have put you both ahead of myself countless times. Now, I just want to think of myself just this once. If you can't accept it, then just act as if you were never cursed with me as a son. My parents froze, clearly having never imagined that a child as obedient as I had been could ever be this stubborn. I rented a new apartment and blocked all contact from my family. Every day, I practically lived in the studio, practicing the choreography Sarah had created. Most of the people in the dance troupe were eccentric but easygoing, a total contrast to the heavy, suffocating atmosphere of my old home. We joked around constantly, but the moment we started dancing, the energy became electric. I didn't want to be a burden, so for a long time, I lived in a loop. Wake up at 8 a.m., start dancing, discuss details with Sarah and the other performers, and then rehearse every move until my body gave out. Exhausted and drained, I would return to my rented apartment and collapse into sleep. Life like this was, of course, nowhere near as comfortable as being a big boss at the Sterling estate. There was no butler or maid. I had to handle everything myself. On top of that, the roof leaked whenever it rained. My daily commute on the subway took 2 hours, leaving me no time to tidy up the house. I once thought I wouldn't be able to adapt, but the sheer exhaustion left me no time to feel the awkwardness of my new life. My anxiety slowly faded, replaced by total immersion in the performance. One day after practice, Sarah suggested walking home with me, calling it a cool down. We walked together through the night streets, passing from one streetlight to the next. When we reached the apartment complex where I lived alone, Sarah said, "You are a completely different person than you were 6 months ago. Have I really changed that much?" I wondered, if my parents saw me now, they'd probably struggle to recognize me. Compared to the polished man dressed in high-end brands from before, I now just grabbed a random t-shirt and threw on some sneakers every day. I had also become less formal, even joining in on the crude jokes shared by the troop members. The internet says that when you vent with foul language, your soul becomes cleaner. I felt that was true. Sarah continued, "Like when I first saw you again, you were so well-groomed and handsome, but your eyes were full of sorrow. Now, even though you dress casually, you know how to smile. I like the you of right now." After she said that, her face suddenly flushed red, and the atmosphere turned awkward. We were standing right in front of my apartment door, and I felt a bit flustered myself. To hide it, I reached for my keys to open the door, but suddenly someone pulled me back. Elena was standing right there in front of me. She asked coldly, "Who is she?" Sarah shot back with her own question, "And who are you?" Elena's face remained a mask of indifference. "We once shared child. And you?" she countered coldly. Sarah opened her mouth to snap back, but I gave her a firm nudge, signaling her to stay quiet. "We are already divorced," I said, addressing Elena directly. "The child is no longer my concern, though I will continue to provide child support." I turned the key and pushed open the door to my apartment. Since neither Elena nor Sarah showed any intention of leaving, I was forced to ask politely, "Would you like some tea?" A moment later, steam drifted from the teacups. Elena sat on the living room sofa, the single armchair suddenly looking cramped under her commanding presence. Sarah, meanwhile, hovered around me in the kitchen like a loyal puppy. "No thanks, I don't drink tea," she said. "Do you want to squeeze some orange juice for you? You know where everything is. It's not the first time you've been here," I replied. The tea grew cold, yet Elena hadn't moved a muscle or uttered a word. Finally, I had to ask, "Is there anything else?" I was just about to head to bed. Elena glanced at Sarah and suddenly let out a cryptic, unsettling smile. "So, you did all this for a green tea girl like her? When did the two of you start?" I've been dancing all day and was far too exhausted to waste breath on an explanation. "Believe whatever you want," I said flatly. Elena nodded and set her cup down, her face returning to its facade of icy politeness. "You will regret this choice." She stood up and walked away, her back cold and distant. Once she was gone, Sarah suddenly asked, "Am I bothering the two of you?" I glanced at her and teased, "Yes, you are." Sarah let out a soft, "Oh," before asking slowly, "Then, do I need to take responsibility?" She wasn't smiling. She stood perfectly still, her thin eyelids lowered as she gazed at me with intense seriousness. I am 3 years older than Sarah and started dancing before her, so I've always been her senior. Years ago, whenever she was starving due to strict weight control diets, I would sneak her out for food. When the teachers caught us and scolded me, she would always step in to protect me, crying and claiming it was all her fault. Because of that, even though she was popular with everyone else, I had always viewed her as a younger sister. I hadn't realized until now just how much she had grown up. "I was just joking," I hurried to clarify. "Well, I wasn't," Sarah replied. The air conditioner hummed, blowing a chill through the room. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. Sarah sighed. "All right, so I've been rejected." She walked to the door and pulled it open. "It's late. I won't bother you anymore." I watched her leave and hesitated for a long second. "Are you coming to the studio to practice tomorrow?" she asked. "No," I replied, looking her in the eye with a serious expression. "Do you really believe that?" Sarah replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "Do you think I'm the kind of person who would abuse my power to get revenge?" I breathed a sigh of relief and stood up to see her out. "In that case, I'll see you tomorrow." Sarah stood at the door, gave me a long look, and said, "Silas, I have to warn you, Even though I'm very sad, this was only the first time. You still have 100 more chances to reject me. Having said her piece, she spun around quickly. See you tomorrow. Then, she closed the door. I stood there for a moment before heading back to the living room to shut the rear window. Under the glow of the streetlights, I saw Elena still standing there, a cigarette between her fingers. The smoke swirled around her cold face in the moonlight. She was watching Sarah walk away with a gaze that was chillingly lifeless. The performance was scheduled for the following week. It wasn't until the dress rehearsal that I realized how much Sarah had undersold this project. The small theater she had mentioned was actually the Banning Grand Theater, the city's largest venue, where the country's most famous plays are staged. During the rehearsal, Sarah brought a camcorder to record the entire process, joking that we could make a documentary once we were famous. She pointed the lens at me. Come on, say a few words to our lead dancer. I hope the show is a huge success and the event blows up, I said. Sarah shook her head. Too cliché. Try again. Suddenly, someone called out, CEO Lou, someone is here to see you. Sarah headed off to deal with it. I opened the camcorder and rewound the footage we had just shot. My heart was still pounding from the high-intensity practice. The piece Sarah choreographed was titled The Azure Melody. The protagonist was a divine bird living in a forest. In the video, I truly seemed to have transformed into that bird, ethereal, light, and mysterious. The other troupe members were busily chatting about where to go for the celebration after the show. But when Sarah walked back down from the upper floor, her complexion looked terrible. She cleared her throat and made a blunt announcement. The opening night is being postponed. The venue is also being changed to a different theater. The entire troupe erupted in a wave of confusion. Why? That theater has terrible stage conditions. Is Sarah trying to sabotage her own reputation? Regardless of their complaints, Sarah remained composed. So what if the theater is small? The audience is still the same. We just need to focus on giving our best performance. Despite her words, only a few days later, I heard from troupe members that the second theater had also rejected our show. Even the most oblivious people began to realize something was wrong. It's usually theaters begging our troupe to perform. How can this be happening? Who did we offend? One member lamented. While I was in the restroom, I overheard people talking outside, seemingly about the sponsors. The Sterling Group is unhappy with the choice of the lead dancer. They claim our lead is too unknown and lacks the star power to sell tickets. They want Sarah to cast Julian as the lead because he's more famous, but she refused. Honestly, why didn't Sarah just invite Julian this time? Does she have some kind of backup plan? She probably just likes the guy. Haven't you seen the way she looks at Silas? Liking him is one thing, but she shouldn't gamble with our futures. This is ridiculous. I stood frozen outside for a few minutes. Suddenly, my phone lit up. A message had arrived from Elena. Silas, can we talk now? I returned to the Sterling estate. The white villa, nestled among the hills and lakes of the suburbs, was as magnificent as ever. The driver dropped me off at the main entrance. As I stepped into the hall, Elena was sitting at the edge of a marble table, watching me silently. You've come back, she said. Inside the house, everything remained exactly as it was when I left. My slippers were still at the door. In the living room, the gold vase still held the roses I had arranged myself. The only difference was that the flowers had long since withered into brittle husks. A nanny led Ethan toward me. He called out, Daddy, his eyes turning red before tears began to stream down his face. I miss you so much. Why don't you come visit me? I turned to look at Elena. Just be straight with me. What do you actually want? Since the divorce, every one of Elena's actions had felt strange and incomprehensible. It's nothing, Elena said. I just want to invite you to come back and live here. I'll take care of the finances. If you want to continue dancing, I'll arrange a better manager and a much larger stage for you. As long as you stay here, no theater will ever dare reject your performance. Elena lifted her coffee cup and took a slow, elegant sip. Think it over carefully. Can Sarah really give you those things? Is that so? I countered. And what is the price? Elena seemed to find my question ridiculous. She let out a small smile. Just keep things as they are. Ethan needs a father. I stared at her for a moment and then asked, Julian rejected your proposal again, didn't he? Years ago, it was precisely because Julian had turned her down that Elena chose me. Her face grew taut with embarrassment, and her tone turned icy. What does that have to do with you? She snapped. Say whatever you want. If you only brought me here to discuss this, then I can give you my answer right now. I don't need anything you're offering. Is it really not worth it? Elena scoffed, her anger beginning to flare. You're throwing away the life I gave you just for one woman. Elena, I've told you already, it's not about her. I simply wasn't happy. As for whether it's worth it, I smiled faintly. It's not about worth, it's about my willingness. How noble, Elena said coldly. But what about the members of your dance troupe? Can every one of them afford to keep losing job opportunities? And Sarah, she can barely take care of herself right now, so what can she possibly give you? Are you using them to threaten me? I'm simply analyzing the costs and benefits for you. Did you calculate the costs and benefits when you married me? I laughed. Because I'm Julian's brother. Even though he rejected you, you could still stay close to him this way, right? Elena, if this is what you call your consideration of profit and loss, then you only make me feel disgusted. Elena froze. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand, hitting the floor with a sharp crash. Sensing the atmosphere had turned volatile, the butler quickly led Ethan out of the room. Elena stood up, approaching me step by step. Why is it that every time you speak to me now, you have to be so bitter and full of thorns? If you're going to be like this, then we have nothing left to say. Elena grabbed my hand, her eyes bloodshot with fury. Silas, what exactly about me is so unsatisfactory to you? Haven't I treated you well enough? I remained silent. Elena seemed to deflate, her energy spent. She let out a long sigh, and her voice suddenly dropped to a lower, softer register. Silas, in the future, you can say whatever you want to me, okay? If there's something about me you don't like, I can change. There's no need, I said. We are divorced. Everything you're saying now is meaningless. Elena looked down at me for a moment before pulling out her phone and making a call. Hello, Felix? It's me. I've decided that Sarah is no longer fit to lead your dance troupe. I immediately lunged for the phone, snatching it away to disconnect the call. This is between us, I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. Leave innocent people out of this. Elena's gaze grew dark as she reached out a hand toward me. Then come back to me, Silas. I'm not a good person, but I can grant your every wish. I called Sarah and told her I wanted to withdraw from the performance. She froze on the other end of the line. After a long pause, I finally spoke. The current theater is too dilapidated. You are someone who belongs on the grandest stage. How can you accept a place like that? Sarah remained silent, with only the sound of her breathing coming through the phone. Can you wait just a little longer? I'll work harder. I'll get you a bigger stage. Sarah, I interrupted her. Do you not understand what a rejection means? Replace me. Stop trying to hold on. I hung up. Elena leaned into my arms, gently stroking my hair. Such an obedient boy. Have you turned into a fool now? I felt a surge of revulsion. What? I asked. Elena's expression remained unchanged. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became, but as I was about to lash out, she leaned in closer. Our personal space vanished, and our breaths began to mingle. Just as she was about to kiss me, I shoved her away. Do you remember our 1-month bet? I asked. Elena's face darkened instantly. Until the bet is over, have some self-respect. With a face as gloomy as a storm cloud, Elena stood up straight and walked away. The world continues to turn, regardless of who is missing. On the dance troupe's official page, our joint promotional poster had already been replaced by a solo poster of Julian. In the photo, Julian looked as captivating as an enchanting red rose, drawing everyone's gaze. After the lead dancer was switched to Julian, the hype for the performance skyrocketed. The comments under the poster multiplied tenfold, and tickets sold out almost instantly. The venue printed on the posters was back to the original Grand Theater, scheduled for the most coveted primetime slot. I turned off my phone and began to perform a solo piece I had practiced countless times. In the empty room, the music swelled. Alone, I retraced the movements I had meticulously refined over the past several months. Sarah, with her natural brilliance, had choreographed this solo. It told the story of a divine bird abandoned by its tribe, a creature pouring its entire soul into a frenzied, lonely dance by a lake. Even those who knew nothing of dance could feel the technical difficulty and the emotional depth in every gesture. I knew all too well that I would never have the chance to perform this piece on stage. I was like a flower that had been nurtured, watered, and carefully pruned for a long time, finally coming into bloom, only to be plucked by a passerby before it could show its colors. No one cared about the struggle it took to blossom. Lately, Elena spent almost every day at the suburban villa. She was no longer just coming home at night. She even handled her company business from the study. She had kept her promise, fixing all the things she had done wrong before. But in reality, she was simply keeping me under house arrest. On the night of Julian's performance, Elena sat in the living room, reading a comic book to Ethan. Her phone on the table vibrated incessantly, but she didn't spare it a single glance. Ethan peeked at his mother a few times before asking, "Mommy, aren't you going out tonight? You always used to take me to see him." "Be quiet," Elena said coldly. Time ticked by, second by second. Suddenly, Ethan's toy phone rang. He picked up and said, "Hello." I don't know what was said on the other end, but Ethan's tears burst forth instantly. He asked frantically, "Uncle, does it hurt? Mommy and I will be there right away." "What happened?" Elena asked, frowning. "Mommy, Uncle Julian fell during the performance." Ethan cried, "We have to go save him." Elena's expression shifted instantly. She stood up, her face a mix of regret and fury, and immediately called the driver. She hurriedly threw on a coat, but before leaving, she turned back to look at me. "Silas, can we just skip it this time?" Elena asked, her voice bordering on a plea. "No," I said, looking her straight in the eye. The contract was written clearly, wasn't it? Half a month ago, Elena had used Sarah and the members of the troupe as collateral to force me to stay by her side. She said she could give me everything as long as I agreed to a wager. It was the easiest bet of my life. I told her, "If you can go 1 month without seeing Julian, I will agree to your terms." Elena thought it was simple and agreed immediately. She believed a month without Julian would be nothing. But in reality, I understood her better than she understood herself. Julian occupied a place in her heart that was too unique, too entrenched. She could never refuse any plea for help from him. Elena stood there as if struck by an invisible bolt of lightning, split in two. Ethan held up his toy watch, displaying a photo. "Uncle sent me this picture. His leg is covered in blood. It looks so painful. Mommy, why are you hesitating? You're not acting like yourself at all." Elena closed her eyes, then snapped them open. "I'm sorry," she whispered to me. "I'll explain later." Then she turned, scooped Ethan up in her arms, and ran out without looking back. The news of the rising star Julian getting injured during his performance hit the headlines instantly. No one cared about the actual content of the dance. They only wanted to gossip about how Elena had used the Sterling family's resources to meddle and have him airlifted to the hospital by helicopter. The comments were filled with praise for their divine love. Only a few lone voices criticized the performance itself, noting that before the accident, his dancing was superficial and failed to capture the essence of the choreography. But those comments were quickly buried by Julian's fans. The original posts were deleted, and then Julian sent me a photo. In the picture, Elena and Ethan were sitting by his hospital bed, each holding a cup of water, looking like a real family. I knew exactly what that photo meant. It meant, "You lost again." He always loved playing this tedious game with me, the war for affection. When we were children, it was a battle for our parents' love. He always had to be the one on top. This time was no different. But the reality was, I hadn't lost. I was the one who initiated this battle. Every day recently, I had been sending Julian a photo of Elena. Aside from Elena herself, the person I understood best in this world was Julian. It sounds dark, but it's the truth. Elena never understood why. Despite her constant sacrifices for Julian, he continued to push her away. It was because Julian is the type of person who, once he is certain of someone's devotion, stops caring about them. He only ever rejected Elena out of a deep-seated fear, a fear that once he was truly loved, he would no longer receive such special, desperate treatment. After all, only a moon that remains forever out of reach is worth pursuing eternally. Thus, the moment he realized Elena was distancing herself from him, treating him as someone no longer worth her attention, his temperament began to shift. He couldn't accept the loss. The photos I sent him of Elena at home with me only fueled this obsession. The more Elena avoided him, the more Julian scrambled to tighten his grip on her. Because of this, Elena could never have won that bet. However, I didn't expect Julian to use his own body as collateral. Julian thought he had one, but he was dead wrong. For a dancer, a healthy, vibrant body is everything. This game for affection was merely a glittering illusion. Perhaps because her own mind was in turmoil, Elena didn't try to stop me when I moved back to my rented apartment this time. Posters for the performance were released once again, but word was that this was at Sarah's insistence. After his injury, Julian could no longer perform, yet Sarah hadn't contacted any other dancers to save the show. She stated on public platforms that no one could recreate the soul of the Azure Melody. Consequently, the upcoming shows were being canceled one by one. After seeing a wave of disparaging comments online, I knocked on Sarah's door. She didn't look happy. Her usually stylish hair was a mess, and she was wearing a simple gray nightgown when she opened the door. Hi. I greeted her stiffly. I still wanted to try and seize the opportunity Julian had discarded. But because my words last time were so harsh, I feared Sarah would hold a grudge. Sure enough, she looked at me with an expressionless face. If you're here to pity me, I don't need it. Seeing her coldness, I shrugged slightly. I just wanted to ask if your dance troupe is still missing a performer. I'd like to nominate myself. Is that okay? Sarah stared at me for a long time, her expression unchanging. Senior, what makes you think I would let someone who abandoned me once back in again? I felt a pang of dejection, knowing I had brought this on myself. Just as I was turning to leave, Sarah grabbed my hand firmly. You're leaving after just one sentence? You give up way too easily. Couldn't you have tried to coax me a little more? I stood there, feeling somewhat foolish and silent. No, I just figured if you didn't agree, I'd come back and ask every single day. Well, I'm agreeing now, Sarah said through gritted teeth. Get inside and sign the contract. Soon after, the Azure Melody was back on the schedule. However, before the official opening, no one held much hope for the production. The top comment online read, if even Julian couldn't master this role, who else in this country can save Sarah? That statement went viral instantly. I was also doxxed by Julian's fans and became a target of relentless ridicule. When the official performance began, the entire auditorium was deathly silent, especially during my solo. The world seemed to hold its breath. I could hear nothing but my own respiration and the thumping of my heart. I learned later that half the audience that night were Julian's fans. They had come specifically to watch me fail, but that didn't stop me. When the dance ended, the applause was thunderous. Cheers, claps, and glowing reviews of the breathtaking performance erupted everywhere. At the audience's demand, we performed the curtain call movements over and over again. That year, the Azure Melody became the highest-selling production in the country. Many people who previously had no interest in dance rushed to the theater to see it for themselves after reading the reviews and seeing the photos. Our tour expanded to more than 10 cities nationwide. Among the sea of faces in the audience, a few left a deep impression on me. First were my parents. They came without telling me, sitting in the front row with solemn expressions throughout the show. I met them after the curtain closed. My older brother had recovered, but now my younger brother had a leg injury. My mother was heartbroken, lamenting how it seemed one of her sons always had to be hurt. My father echoed the sentiment, noting that with every gain comes a loss. Finally, he calmed down and accepted my divorce from Elena. Perhaps because I had gained some fame, which was once again useful to them, they began treating me with more courtesy. Before leaving, they left me a key to the house. I never went back. Then there was Elena and our son. She specifically brought Ethan backstage to find me. I hadn't changed yet and was still in my stage costume. When they saw me, a look of profound surprise filled their eyes. Ethan's face flushed red, his eyes sparkling. Is it true? Are you really my daddy? Soon, you'll have a new father, I said, looking at Elena. Congratulations to the two of you on finally getting married. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. As long as you want me to, Silas, I can call it off at any time. I was startled. Elena, don't joke like that right now. But Elena pulled out a diamond ring. Silas, can we start over? CEO Sterling, don't you think this is incredibly contradictory? Elena shook her head. No, actually, I've liked you for a very long time. Back then, I even asked Julian to deliver a love letter to you. But he told me that I wasn't your ideal type and said that you actually hated me. Because of that, I felt I could only keep my distance from you. I signaled for the assistant nearby to take Ethan away. Elena, I don't believe a single word you just said. Being in love isn't your style. You don't need to play the part of the deeply devoted lover with me. Elena fell silent for a long time before finally telling the truth. After I thought I'd been rejected, I planned to work hard to show you how I could change. But Julian kept bothering me. He understood me so well. So, eventually I really did shift my feelings toward him. Then what's the problem? I countered. Now that you've achieved exactly what you wanted, why come looking for me? Elena let out a bitter laugh. If I hadn't discovered this diary, perhaps I could have let go. She pulled a blue notebook from her coat pocket. I'm sorry for finding this at your house. I remained silent, unable to find the words. It turned out that my decision to marry Elena hadn't just been about securing capital to save my family's business. Years ago, when I fell from the school stage, everyone panicked. Elena was the one who immediately rushed up to stop people from touching my injury and called the emergency services. As I was being carried away on the stretcher, I saw her back. It was the only moment of safety in that entire bloody memory. I had recorded that moment in my diary. Who could have known that the day we met again would be so shameful? Elena continued to look at me. Then we got married. I always thought you hated me, that you only married me for money. So that's how I treated you. It was all my fault. If I hadn't believed Julian back then, if we had been together then, if I hadn't held those prejudices against you, maybe we wouldn't have missed each other. Elena, I interrupted. Everything you're saying is meaningless. The person who liked you was the Silas of 5 or 6 years ago. The issue isn't who was wrong. It's that the time has passed. Right now, I don't like you at all. I have no feelings left for you. Can you understand that? Clinging to the past isn't your style. Don't make me and our son look at you with contempt, okay? Elena's face turned deathly pale. She whispered an apology, straightened her back, and walked out unsteadily. I heard that in the end, Elena and Julian never got married. Julian moved back into our parents' house, but because of his leg injury, he became constantly irritable, making our parents' lives just as miserable as his own. Elena still frequently brings Ethan to the theater to watch my performances. I instructed the staff not to let them backstage anymore. Surprisingly, the person who left the deepest impression on me was a stranger. After the show ended and the crowd had dispersed, she approached me alone, clutching a bouquet of flowers, and asked shyly, Silas, do you still remember Cindy? I nodded, and she let out a sigh of relief. I'm Cindy's younger sister. She asked me to bring these flowers to you. In that moment, Cindy's vibrant, life-loving face flashed through my mind. I was overjoyed. Why didn't she come herself? I would have saved the best seat for her. The sister shook her head. I'm so sorry. She really wanted to be here, but she couldn't. 2 weeks ago, after a failed surgery, Cindy passed away abroad. Her final wish had been to see me on stage. Tucked into a single purple rose was a card with Cindy's scribbled handwriting. Silas, in the end, I couldn't overcome my own hurdles. But I believe you will carry my spirit with you as you keep moving forward. In the next life, let's make sure we meet sooner. My eyes lingered on the smile drawn at the end of the note. The ink began to blur as my vision clouded over. Much later, once the national tour had concluded, I spoke with Sarah. I've applied to study under a master choreographer I admire abroad. He agreed to let me join his company, but I have to start from the bottom again. Sarah couldn't understand. Isn't your life here good enough? Starting over sounds simple, but requires so much sacrifice. It'll be exhausting. I looked at her quietly. Sarah's eyes slowly welled with tears. Is it because of me? Do you feel uncomfortable because I like you? I shook my head. I've never thought that loving someone was something to be ashamed of. When my first marriage began, I was like many others. I thought love was the most important thing in the world. Even now, after a divorce and having a child, I still believe love is vital. It's what connects me to you and to everyone else. I continued. However, precisely because I've accomplished these major milestones, I realize I'm still not satisfied. Beyond love, there's so many things I have yet to do. Love is important, but it cannot make me stop. I want to keep walking my own path. How long will you be gone? Sarah asked. At least 3 years. Sarah fell silent for a long time. My grandfather is ill. I can't go abroad with you for the next few years. She paused, then added, going alone is fine too. Just remember to take care of yourself. I will, I promised. Sarah continued speaking. I won't wait for you, you know. Why should I waste your excellence? Neither of us said another word. Tears slowly traced paths down Sarah's cheeks. Her eyelids were red and swollen. She couldn't maintain her composure any longer. Sarah closed her eyes and pulled me into a tight embrace. Remember what I told you? You have 100 chances to reject me. She pulled away, wiped her tears, and forced that familiar smile back onto her face. Go, Silas. If that is what you want, then keep moving forward. Don't look back just because I like you. After all, this is the person you were always meant to become.